All right, everybody, happy Friday. Welcome back to another edition of Fintech Fridays. We're going to take a different path this Friday and do a little conference recap. We on the FinLocker side have been on the road here so far this year, hitting the conference circuit, and we haven't even hit all of them. It's been a whirlwind. As we record, I believe there's two happening this week that obviously we're not attending, but I've got my friend and colleague PB joining. PB is our head of strategy and product here at FinLocker. PB, welcome to FinTech Fridays.
Thank you, Brian. Excited to be here. Conference season indeed.
Yeah, so we thought, you and I talked about this this podcast, and we thought we ought to just do a recap of kind of the season so far, because since January of this year, I know between you and I, we've attended 5 or 6 conferences.
Right.
We probably had another 4 to 6 that we could have attended.
Right.
And like I said earlier, there's a couple happening this week. So let's start by let's just talk about the conferences that you've been to so far, and then based on that, kind of your thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, thanks again. Super excited to be on this podcast. I've been watching this for a while, and I've been secretly eyeing, how do I get in one of these things? So thank you, Vivi. We after a long hiatus, like after 3 years or so, I've been on 3 different conferences this late winter, early spring. The most recent being the MBA Tech in Vegas. Vegas is always fun, and MBA Tech was fun. Just prior to that, spent a few days at Lenders One up in Desert Ridge, Phoenix. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And then what I really opened this year with was the MBA Servicing Conference down in Orlando. So those are the 3 I went to, the Servicing, the Lenders One, and the Tech. Also, first time I'm ever attending these industry conferences as a Fintech vendor.
Yeah.
And not as a GSE Fannie Mae representative. So there's a little bit of a change there in my approach and what I was trying to accomplish and get out of these conferences. 2 of the conferences, in the MBA Servicing Conference in Orlando and the one in Vegas, the MBA Tech, I got a chance to be on a couple of panels. I talked about AI and ML in the mortgage industry, and just preparing for those. Was a lot of fun because it really brought me back to being current in all the new industry development, while everybody was busy trying to take care of these extraordinary volumes that came in through COVID. It was also obvious that our industry was busy innovating and kind of doing new and cool things. So prepping for the panels and kind of catching up on latest developments was a lot of fun. Each of these conferences had something a little different about them. Obviously, they serve a different audience. But I also felt like there was some common thread on those, and that was kind of neat.
So one thing you said a few times that we need to clarify in case our spouses are watching. It wasn't just fun the whole time. Come on, PB, man.
True that. It was work too, right? You spend time. The keynotes were very engaging in all the conferences. You get to hear from very senior leaders in the industry, very accomplished individuals. In the case of Lenders One, I think they had 2 external speakers, and they have perspectives, and the perspectives are really valuable for us as a small company, for us FinLocker, as well to our own growth and our own businesses, but also to our industry in large. I think that was really good. And the panel sessions, I mean, they shout out to all the organizers there in all 3 conferences that I've been to. And the panel sessions were very well curated, I thought, and each of these conferences, we'll get into it when we talk about what was unique about these conferences. But
yeah.
Each of those, I felt like the prep was really good. So, yeah, as much fun as this was in the after sunset, the fact that you had to be sharp and be up, and again, first thing in the morning, to be there for a keynote so that you didn't miss a nugget. Yeah, that was interesting.
So you also hit on something I think would be super interesting for the audience in terms of perspective, right? So prior to these 3 conferences, you had the pandemic and the lockdown, so we weren't doing these things face to face. And then prior to that, you sat in a different chair with a different company,
Right.
and the conferences you would have attended would have had a completely different kind of meaning and scope. Maybe share for the audience, just from your perspective, kind of attending and engaging at conferences as a Fannie Mae representative,
Right.
how that differs in terms of the engagement and what you're trying to accomplish as one of the senior leaders here at FinLocker.
Yeah, great question. Obviously, I spent a lot of out of my 25 some years in mortgage technology, 18 of those were at Fannie Mae, and I owe a lot to that institution and for the opportunities I got and the growth I got. Towards the last few years in particular at Fannie Mae, my time there, Ryan, were extremely productive, a ton of really good opportunity. Actually got to sit on the board of MISMO for a year and a half or so when the GSEs were invited back onto the board. I did some vendor management work while I was at Fannie prior to that, and then some digital products and digital product strategy work. And in all those cases, the participation in these conferences was a little bit more sharing of what the GSEs were thinking and what the GSEs were trying to do. When we go to MBA Tech or MBA Servicing or any one of those, we would talk a lot more about the types of things Fannie was doing along with our counterparts at Freddie at the time, Sam Oliver, who's still there, a great industry leader. Talk about industry data standardization, talk about digitization, talk about the initiatives that Fannie Mae may have or the GSEs have that may impact the industry. And this is a very different role I'm in. I'm here now going to this conference to listen to what the agencies are going to do, what the agencies are going to say. My friends and former colleagues in both places kind of think about, what's the next coming. For example, when last year or so, when Fannie Mae introduced, and I think Freddie also has something similar in the works, around rent payment being utilized for loan underwriting. And those kinds of initiatives have far-reaching impact for us in the industry. So the role is a little different. The side of the table that you sit in is different. But what's really cool is unmistakable. Everybody's trying to do what they can from whatever seats you are in to move the industry forward. Whether it's people, process, technology, whichever way that you think you can contribute to move the industry forward. But yeah, I mean the size and scale of our company as we are now.
Yeah.
And the seat we sit in is significantly different than being a representative of the GSE. But I have to say the experience I've had at the GSE was extremely valuable, and I kind of build on that in this role.
So as we look at kind of 2022, kind of I'll call it the first. If we look at it as a football game and there's 4 quarters, well, we just had the first quarter of this football game in terms of the conference season. What would you say about the kind of the difference in these conferences? But then if you're just, I know I have a perspective on kind of this first batch of conferences, but maybe just across the conferences, the differences in the relative to past conferences that you noticed, and any themes that kind of were kind of tied to all 3.
Yeah, well, what ties to all 3, I think, was the general enthusiasm of the industry and the participants in wanting to meet each other. I think there's a sense of normalcy back on whether it is in some cases actually these conferences were the first time employees of the same company were meeting after a long time, because most offices did not have travel either, right? So what was really interesting to see is a common thread. The MBA Servicing Conference, the Lenders One, MBA Tech, they catered to different audiences, but they all had this common theme of individuals wanting to meet again, meet their competitors, meet their industry partners, meet their customers, meet their vendors. I thought that was really kind of unique to see. As much as the interest was in seeing the content in the conference, there was just as much interest in just meeting people, and that I thought was kind of good. And our industry really does need the human touch, and you know this, right?
Yeah.
It's just an extremely important aspect of all of our lives and our customers' lives and our end consumers' life. And the process of transacting for a home can't be too impersonal. And therefore, I think the human touch and the enthusiasm for people to meet each other and kind of do that human thing was actually quite common and nice.
One thing I noted I went to, I guess it would have been late last summer.
Yeah.
A couple smaller events that were probably maybe a little early, all things considered. In the first two I went to, when you checked in, you got a wristband, and the wristband was meant to say whether you were like, keep your 6 feet. I'm good with a fist bump, or, hugs are okay. And I don't know if you noticed this the last couple of conferences, but I just observed people, and you already hit on this. There was like this raw excitement for being face to face, and there was tons of the hugs and just a lot of people that hadn't done this for a while and had missed out on opportunity. So it felt like some normalcy was coming back to business, not just the mortgage business, but to business in general.
Especially the one in Vegas, which was just happened to be timeline-wise the most recent one, and you got to see people without the mask, and you could recognize them, and you just didn't walk past somebody like it happens in an airport. I am sure I walked past people that were colleagues of mine or friends of mine, and I had a mask on, they would have a mask on, and probably just would walk past, not quite sure. You should stop and say hello, right? And so that part was actually kind of neat, and it's also our industry does need each other. It's not just personal relationships. What comes out of the personal relationships is the underlying interest for all of us to create value for our stakeholders, value for our customers, and for our consumers. So the complexity of the mortgage industry, both in terms of the breadth of the types of things that you have to solve for, and the depth as to how well you have to cover the ground that you are in. No one industry participant can go alone and do it. Whether you're a customer, whether you're a vendor, you're a regulator, you're going to need partnerships, you're going to need this ecosystem. So I think conferences kind of bring that opportunity of kind of bringing people together. So that part was also nice, not just the human interaction side, but also the fact that this is the industry recognizes the business imperative of kind of collaborating and working together.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question, because I think what tends to happen is, let's face it, in the mortgage industry, we're sitting in a pretty interesting time in terms of what's happened rapidly in the last, 120 days or so. We've seen rapid rise in interest rates, which has led to a precipitous drop in origination volume, which then leads to pricing competitiveness, i.e., also known as margin compression, and you start to stack all this stuff on top of each other. And now the accounting department, the CFO's office, is starting to say to the various traveling departments, well, I'm not sure about this conference. What are you going to get out of it? What's the return on investment if we spend $20,000 attending this conference? I'd love your perspective on kind of how you think ROI can be or is measured as it relates to these events.
Yeah, and that's a question we asked ourselves here at FinLocker too, right? Is what's the ROI? What's the ROI for? I recall before I was going out to MBA Tech, I texted somebody here local in the DC area, another exec from one of the GSEs, and asked that question. Hey, I'm headed to MBA Tech. Are you going to be there? Will we meet? Maybe we could grab a pint or something and catch up. And the response back was, should I go? Is this valuable? And I'll tell you, after having gone through all three that I have been to, and I'm sure you have a perspective on this, Brian, I think there is a very strong ROI. Like I said earlier, a big part of building and amplifying our businesses, whether we are a lender or a vendor or a GSE, whatever else, comes with the relationships that we have. Right. We all need a healthy and connected ecosystem, right, to service each other's business well. And I think the notion of being able to solve for things on the other side of a Zoom screen, like how you and I are, I think is a necessity, and we've done it. Admirably so, the industry has done a fantastic job for the last 3 years or so trying to meet this extraordinary demand through the pandemic by being as remote as ever. But I still think, for you to kind of really innovate and co-create with somebody and take a venture that may be a little bit more risky in what you want to develop or design or test in the market, you do need that human trust and that element. And that in of itself is an ROI for me. For all the 3 conferences we've been to, we were able to look a few people in the eye. We were able to kind of demonstrate what we think we can do for them and vice versa, understand what they're looking for. And that gives us more confidence in understanding whether or not we are a solution for them. Not everything has to be about an imminent contract, the way I see it. It just improves our understanding of what the customer's pain point is. It improves the customer's understanding of our value prop. And that's a good outcome too, right? They didn't have to write a check when they didn't have to, or other way around. So I think there is a positive ROI for just a basic business development kind of area. The other thing I will tell you is unmistakable is the perspective that you're going to gain, and at least the one I gained. So when we went to the servicing conference, it was really cool to see the amount of innovation that continued to happen in the industry in improving the efficiency of what happens in loan administration. Right, the number of vendors and the type and the variety of solutions and doc imaging and OCR and AI and ML that could actually help your operations with as we are heading to a smaller margin market, those things are valuable.
Right.
And there's not one place you can get a broad view of all this development out there and the opportunity out there. And conferences really do a good job of those. So I thought, we got some of that. The servicing conference down in Orlando, the one Lenders One, I think it probably stood out for how clear and compelling it is to showcase the power of collaboration. What can you achieve if a bunch of small and medium-sized mortgage lenders can come together and have a vision of competing and differentiating where they have to, but for things that they can build scale to either develop a service as a common thing or procure a service across the membership. I think Lenders One, you saw some of that value of real collaboration kind of translating into business value there. And then MBA Tech, I mean, the expose, you were there on the floor with me. Just so much variety there, right? So much thought going into the industry, all the way from point of thought solutions like ours, through point of sale, through LOSs, fulfillment systems, all the cool new things coming around in the e-mortgage, e-close, and notary kind of space. Going to these conferences, I do think is extremely valuable, especially if you're a decision maker in the industry. You will benefit greatly from having this comparative view. In 30 minutes, you get to evaluate 3 different vendors, and you get to walk away with the perspective of what might be good for your business. It may be one of those 3, all of those 3, or none of those 3. Doesn't matter. But you get to understand, okay, these are the developments that are out there. How can I apply this for my business? Right. So I thought there was some real value in attending these conferences. At least once this year, I got something out of them.
Yeah, I would add that for us at FinLocker, and it's probably the same for other technology providers or solution providers to the lending industry. As much as we go there to develop business and generate revenue, obviously, there are other sides of it that are equally beneficial. To be able to face off with potential business partners, not customers, but other technology providers, where together maybe we can create a unique offering for a set of lenders. We had a bunch of those kind of conversations that just don't happen through a Zoom. They just don't. And so when you're on the exhibit hall floor and maybe you're grabbing a latte or an espresso at one of the vendors booths that sponsors it, and there's 3 kind of technology people, companies together, and just these ad hoc brainstorming sessions are invaluable. And it's cool to see and be involved in that directly, but you can see it happening all over the conference floors and all the little nooks and crannies, there's these little hallway conversations going on. And so that's,
And
to me,
servicing
that's
was a really
powerful.
good example. Brian, servicing was a really good example though at the conference. There were as many conversations that I saw in the hallways and in the happy hours and over lunch and breakfast, that kind of thing, as I did in the panels. And there was an unmistakable trend and acknowledgement on consumer retention as being an important opportunity for that. So there's a trend here. There is a
Yeah.
so well, you kind of get to pick up those kinds of things, and whether you are selling a CRM system or you are a sales vendor or you are a servicer looking for a different way of trying to improve your revenue or your margin, you got to see what else is going on out there in the industry. What are relevant and relatable pain points that the industry has with you and your ecosystem partners. So there are some real trends you can pick up. I don't know if I've been to a servicing conference in the past where they really talked about retention as much as they talked about in this one in Orlando.
Yeah, it was for sure interesting. So let's get into our wind down stage. First of all, this has been awesome. I love, I get your perspective all day, every day, right? And it's great for me to be able to share your kind of insights into this. So let's talk a little bit about the fun stuff that did occur at some of the conferences, and maybe a little bit of the not so fun stuff that you got to experience.
Yeah, fun stuff for sure was all the hospitality and the sponsored events, right? I think all the three ones the conferences I've been to had very generous sponsors. What stands out, the ice bar at Orlando, the one that Sagent had a party on. I think that was incredible. Black Knight had this really nice hospitality out by the lakeside at the Bellagio, I think at the MBA Tech, and that was great. Those were really fun because they were very well attended, right? I think Tawant had a late night hospitality event in Vegas as well. That was very well attended. So the hospitality things were definitely fun because they were well attended. Who's who of the industry was in those sessions, right? In those gatherings, and it was a relaxed environment to kind of catch up and for some of those people I haven't had a chance to see in 4 or 5 years or so, you got to ask about their family and ask about how their businesses are doing, and some of them left their former companies and doing other great things, and so you get to catch up with professionals as people as well, and that was kind of neat. The not so fun part is, I have to say, all the airplanes I've been on for the 3 conferences, they were overbooked. They were just full packed, and crowded airplanes I could do without. And that part wasn't great because they kept looking for volunteers to get off the airplanes, and so I suppose travel is back. That part wasn't all that great, but it was worth the trade-off to be able to go see a few friends and business partners in the eye.
Yeah, I love your recap of the events, because the ice bar I still remember going into the vault or the ice box that they had. It was unbelievable. I'll share a quick story on kind of one of my least favorite things so far in the conference season. So I won't name the conference or the hotel, but I'm in my room one night. And early, I tend to pull Houdinis sometimes and just disappear and get back to my room. So I'm back in my room early, catching up on emails, and just starting to kind of doze off. And all of a sudden, I hear this, like these feet, these little scurrying up and back and forth in the roof or the ceiling above my bed. And it turns out there was some kind of a little critter kind of just going back and forth because there was construction going on in the hotel. So I had to call down and see if I could switch rooms. And by the time they came up to my room, the scurrying had stopped.
Was gone. Oh, bummer. Yeah, at least happened to you during the day while you were trying to catch up on your email. If it was probably would have lost some sleep.
Yeah. So PB, thanks so much for coming on. I think this was super interesting and helpful for our audience. What I would encourage folks to do is, there's still Q1's over in the 2022 conference season. There's some great events coming up. I'm heading to Irvine, California next week, actually, for the California Mortgage Bankers Mortgage Innovators Conference. They do a great job there. So I think, PB, you would join me in encouraging folks to take advantage of these conferences that are back in person. Go there with an open mind and try to soak in kind of not only the experience, but the knowledge and the trends and bring something back to your business that's going to help you kind of thrive here in 2022 and beyond. Any closing thoughts, PB?
No, I completely echo what you said. I think being out there is the right thing to do, whether you're a vendor or a lender. I think not to name drop one or two and then forget a bunch of people and offend anybody, but there's always value in running into a Kevin Peranio or with a Julian or with even my former colleagues at Fannie or Freddie, and you stress test something. You're thinking of some idea that you think is going to be more helpful for your business, and they may be able to have a perspective. They'll tell you, hey, PB, you're full of shit, or they may tell you, hey, man, there's something there you guys should think. So whether or not you get a contract out of a conference is, to me, actually not as interesting. It's always welcome. We'll take it. We're a small startup, but the counsel and the perspective that you get from other industry participants, I think, is just as beneficial, if not more beneficial, for me at least. So, yeah, I'd encourage anyone who has the ability to make a visit out there for any of these conferences. Go out there, be on the floors, look at what's happening in tech, look at what's happening with the regulator, look at what's happening with your competition. And I think it's really going to help you develop your own perspective and make 2022 an awesome year for you.
I love it. Well, PB, thank you so much for coming on FinTech Fridays. I know you and I are going to see each other on another Zoom coming soon. It'll be a
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, PB. Thanks, everybody, and tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you.